Hello, we are sitting here and we're privileged to have a conversation with Walt Cross, and many of you might know him already, but for those that don't, Walt, just maybe give us a short introduction from where you are from and what's your ministry, and then we can get to maybe into a discussion a little bit on health here in the end time.
So I'm from East Tennessee in the Appalachian Mountains, not far from Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I'm from Tennessee originally. I took healthcare. I worked in healthcare administration for about 20 years and then changed over to lifestyle health about 26 years ago, which I find getting to root cause being more effective than just treating signs and symptoms. So that's what I do now. We have a store and we take care of folks locally, and then I travel a lot teaching lifestyle health.
Excellent.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, we also have a lifestyle center in South Africa. Where's the sign? I don't know. There it is, over there. It's Verity Center.
Okay. I'm excited about y'all's center.
Yes. And much like your philosophy, we believe that the conventional approach to disease and all of these issues is a approach that might be necessary in certain circumstances and under conditions where, the disease is going to kill you in 5 days, and you can't use long-term methods that will cure you in 50 days, so then you need that kind of intervention. So we don't exclude the medical world, but we believe that a lot of the diseases in the world are as a consequence of the lifestyles of people. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And so there are two approaches. The one is attack the enemy approach, which is allopathy, which is the medical world's method, and the other one is naturopathy. Now, in terms of the naturopathy, we accept that the body is subject to environmental toxins, either from what you eat or what you drink or what you breathe in, and some of them you can avoid, some of them you cannot avoid. You cannot stop breathing in a polluted atmosphere. Is there anything you can do to mitigate the circumstances? So our approach there is cleanse the body, train the people not to put things into their body which are detrimental to them, and any environmental or other toxins that are in the body, eliminate them by natural means. Now, in the medical world, people will suppress symptoms. You have a headache, you get a tablet to suppress the headache. You have a fever, you take a tablet to suppress the fever. You have a lot of phlegm in your lung and you're coughing like crazy, you take a substance that will dry it up. So in the natural world, our approach would be, those are actually tools that are designed to help you get over a certain problem. So if you're running a temperature, your body is trying to break down certain toxins in your body which are causing the fever reaction and activating your immune system. Help the body. Drink a lot of water, take a fever bath, increase the temperature to within safe limits. If you have phlegm on the lungs, help the body to get rid of the phlegm, not dry it up. In other words, work with the system in order to eliminate what you have to eliminate. And you being a health practitioner will know that the body's mechanism of getting rid of toxins would be, let's say, through the kidney, or through the skin, or through the lungs. So those are the three main avenues. So sweating, getting rid of toxins through the skin, enabling that, drinking a lot, taking hot baths or sitting in a sauna or infrared sauna, or any one of those to help the body to get rid of those toxins. So naturalistically, using what nature has provided and augmenting it. Now, you're an expert when I look at your booth on things like far infrared sauna and maybe ozone. Could you talk a little bit about that and
Sure.
what it does?
With far infrared, the bottom line is circulation. The bottom line is you have a cell that you have proper nutrients in it that it needs and not allowing the bad stuff in, and then having good perfusion, good circulation. Perfect health is perfect circulation, we're told. And so what that sauna does is it aids in the circulation aspect of that model to where you're changing the water molecule in the blood to where it has better perfusion. And so the blood works better getting into the cell. And whether it's hydrotherapy, whether it's massage, whether it's blue light, they're all increasing circulation, just like exercise.
Now, far infrared penetrates quite far into the body, right?
It does, yes. It's debated. NIH says it's about 1.5 inches. Some people say it's as much as 2.5 inches. But pretty well, what I read on NIH is about 1.5 inches.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of when the body experiences toxification, and we all have toxification, either from what we take in from the environment or what we eat or whatever, the body has a tendency to deposit those things in fat layers because many toxins are, of course, fat soluble. And they tend to be particularly in the fat under the skin. And I understand that the far infrared actually moves the system to make those more, to loosen them basically from the fat in which they are. And then if you can induce the sweating process and the sebaceous secretions, you can actually get rid of those toxins.
It's true, and if you can do a contrast, it's even better. So let's say you put a person in a hot shower, put in the far infrared, and then take them and put them in a hot shower and then go cold. Then put them back in the far infrared, and then go back hot shower, go cold. And that contrast back and forth, we actually find will make it even faster.
Yes, because obviously you're opening up the cardiovascular system.
Yes.
The cold will restrict, the other ones will expand the vascular system. So you're actually putting a blood shunt through there and helping the body to get rid of whatever it is that it's trying to get rid of.
Yes, we actually can get more out of the fat cells in doing that contrast also, the toxins.
Is this, what you're talking about, is this now for general health, or is there specific diseases or things that it can help for?
Yeah, it's actually both. It's for general health, keeping that immune system up. Mary Lou gets in it probably 2 to 3 times a day, just to keep her immune system up, keep her body health up. But yes, we use far infrared for healing bones. We use it for healing wounds. Sports medicine uses it as it works. A 20-minute far infrared is like an hour pre-workout, they found at the universities. They use it after as a post to help also. Then it's also used for firefighters use it. So if I go in a house fire, I've got my turnouts on, I've got my air pack on, and if you measure my urine after the house fire, you'll still pick up toxins from that house fire. But if I do the far infrared after the house fire, then you check my urine. So check my urine, do the far infrared, check it again. It's much lower. So you have fire departments like Fort Worth. I was told that every fire station in Fort Worth has a far infrared. We use it in our fire department for guys to use after fires. We actually have guys from other fire departments come and use it to clean their bodies out.
Okay, so that's amazing. So it's a detoxification system, the far infrared.
Now you say up to 2 to 3 times a day?
My wife does. She just feels so much better.
And what periods of time?
Usually 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yes.
At what temperatures?
You just turn it on. The temperatures can get up as much as 160, 170. But a number of years ago, several years ago, she went into heart failure due to, when they went in and looked, they came back and they said, after going in on a cath, they said, have you ever used this drug before? She says, yes, 44 years ago. It was adriamycin, also known as the Red Devil. And she had used it for leukemia when she was 15 and 16. And it took her heart down. Literally, when you looked at the echo, her left ventricle had about that much movement in the echo. Terrible. Her ejection fraction was a 10-15. Put her straight on to the heart transplant floor. Told her if we didn't put a new mitral valve in within a year that she'd die. And but you got to have an EF of up to 35 or you won't open it. So the hospital just had some significant challenges not being able to help, and we went natural. And the far infrared is one of them that we used, and it still helps her today. She's not up to a 55, 65 where I'd like her, but because perfusion, we'll use the red light just itself on, say 11 inches off the heart. So that's like a rifle. And so that increases the perfusion in the heart. And then...
But there's also a far infrared light.
It is a far infrared light. It's just an individual light. And so the individual light is like a rifle. So I can shoot your shoulder, your knees, your elbow, your heart, or a lady with breast cancer, the breast. And then we'll go then to the sauna systemically like a shotgun, and then it increases the perfusion for the whole body. So because she's no longer at a 10-15, she's up to a 35-40, and God's tremendous, isn't he? Where we were told that she had to have a mitral valve. If she did not within 1 year, she would die. But we had to have her up to a 35 to put a new one in. When we went to check it, and we were up to a 35-40, they said, it's closing just normal now, it's healed. And God's good, doing natural. And so, but what it does for her is it increases the perfusion in the heart, it increases the perfusion in the whole body, and she just feels so much better because she has better vascular flow.
So your rifle technique, is that also for about 20 minutes or how long?
Yes, 20 minutes. But let's say I'm having a sinus issue. And I'm going to bed and I think, let me hit it hard. So I can lay down, put it over my face, and I'll go to sleep, turn it on for all night, and I'll leave it on for all night long. And I'll wake up in the morning, and it's cleared all that up. Very powerful.
Okay. And do you use ozone treatment in any way?
Yes, ozone can be used with that also. Ozone is probably one of the best ways to get cortisol down. Exercise gets cortisol down, very effective, but ozone is also another great way to lower cortisol. And a lot of folks have elevated cortisol because of stress being the #1 diagnosis in America.
And some people, because of stress, they tend to have heart arrhythmias.
Yes.
And high blood pressure, of course, stress-induced. So the same equipment can be used for that as well, right?
Well,
do you use a combination of ozone and infrared? Or?
Yes, but also I want to be cautious. I don't want to use a good tool instead of a bad tool. Yes, it's helpful, but also I want to find out root cause of why is that blood pressure? Why is that arrhythmia? Is the blood pressure due to stress? Is it due to dehydration? Is it due to being outside ideal body weight? Is it due to, as Harvard just came out in November 1st of this last year, finding gut biome, poor gut biome will raise blood pressure? Is it because of sleeping less than 7 hours a night, which American Heart Association in June of 22 found if you get less than 7 hours of sleep a night, you're prone to have high blood pressure? Is it an issue of eating too much sugar? Is it an issue of eating too much salt? Is it an issue of renal failure? You know, kidneys are the switches that run the blood pressure.
But stress again can induce insomnia.
Absolutely, yes.
So it becomes a vicious circle.
It is. Is it atherosclerosis? Is it arteriosclerosis? Or is it just a heart issue? So you want to back up and find that root cause, remove that root cause. And yes, the far infrared is a great tool to use, but also I want to find that root cause.
And do you have any experience with near infrared? Because there's a lot of debate, you know, this one or that one.
So near infrared is what I first started using probably 20 some years ago, and we use that on cancer. And I understand there's benefits because we use both on cancer. In China, they use far infrared a lot on cancer, but we've used near infrared for a long time. So there's benefits between both. I just spend most of my time in the far infrared right now, but there's good benefits with the near infrared too.
Interesting.
Do you also combine with all of this? I know that you're an expert on all the herbs that you use. So do you have to combine all of this to help on the process?
I do, but it depends on the situation. Let's say you came with me with type 2 diabetes. I would look at Genema sylvestre, fenugreek, cedarberry, blueberry leaf, peachtree leaf, basil, holy basil, all kinds of herbs that we can use to normalize that blood sugar. Chromium picolinate, chromium picolinate. But I don't use them anymore because it's like using an analog. You know, when let's say you eat meat and you quit eating meat and you say, oh, let me show you some of this healthy veggie stuff. And then you get stuck on it. I'd rather you just start eating the good, healthy food and let's just not deal with that right now. And I find that on the herbs side, if you come in with diabetes and I say, well, let me try these herbs to normalize blood sugar, then I'm not doing any different than I did for 20 years. I'm still masking and managing with a healthy tool. And I want to get to root cause. And type 2 diabetes is easier to reverse than toenail fungus. We have over a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes if you get to root cause. And if you get that insulin receptor working again, you shrink the inflammation, you address the fat that's it's clogged up. If you address the weight, if you address the pancreas working well, you can reverse that The last time I was in Africa, I was in Rwanda. Lady comes in, she's got a glucose of 200 and something.
Wow.
She's on insulin, she's on metformin, and in 14 days, and in 2 weeks we start our 20th program in Kigali. In 14 days, she's off insulin, off metformin, and she got a blood glucose of 115. The time before I was there, ladies, and again, she comes in with a 400 and something, and the first lady was 400 and something. And insulin, metformin, and in 14 days, they're off insulin, off metformin, and she's at a 124. Now, was the diabetes reversed? No, we were managing her through the lifestyle program we were using, the nutrition, the exercise. Loma Linda Medical School found that a 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than one shot of insulin.
A 20-minute what?
A 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than one shot of insulin. So we used Dr. Walter Kempner's program at Duke University, his philosophy, as he looked at little humans and big humans. He found little humans exercised 4 times a day. They had recess in the morning, they had PE, they had recess in the afternoon, they went home and played. So Kempner, a German physician at Duke University, he said, let's do the same with adults. Let's exercise them 4 times a day. And so we exercise our folks 4 times a day, just as children going out and exercising 4 times a day. So it's like playing, yes. So that's like 4 shots of insulin. So this lady had changed her diet. She was exercising 4 times a day. She was having adequate nutrition. She was going to bed by 9 o'clock, but we had not shrunk her body weight down to ideal body weight yet. So she still has type 2 diabetes, even though we got her blood sugar down to 115. I kind of look at it like repairing a car. You got to restore it. And let's say it's a 1957 Chevy. You're going to have to take a grinder to it. You're going to have to sand it. You're going to put Bondo. You're going to put Tiger Paw. You're going to sand it. Primer, sand, paint it. Put new upholstery, new tires, rebuild that in. That's the restoring process. Once you finish restoring it, plus you want to restore all the doors, not just one door, all the doors. You want to totally restore it.
Yes.
Well, once it's restored, you don't take a grinder to it anymore. So then I move over to Cornell University, which is a whole food plant-based diet that Colin Campbell came up, which you spoke with back in the summer of 2020.
Correct. I had a long discussion with him.
Yes. You know, he said that was the best discussion he'd ever had with anybody. He thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. So when I learned his program at Cornell, when I took courses at Cornell, it's basically that beginning diet, you know, fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables, exercise, and also he's big into exercise and water. And so I look at it as restoring, and then I look at it as maintaining. And so when I work with folks like that lady, I've got to restore her, totally restore her, then we can go on. And so we got to get all the processes. The ideal body weight, it's got to come down where it belongs. And so we've got to address all those root causes.
Yeah. You see, people want a treatment for whatever they have, but they don't want a lifestyle change. And the two have to actually go hand in hand, because as you say, type 2 diabetes is reversible. And it's not a question of not having enough insulin, it's that the insulin is no longer operating at the level of the receptors.
Yes.
In order to open the cells, in order to metabolize the sugar, because the cell has blocked it.
That's right.
Because it can't handle the sugar anymore.
Yes.
So you have to treat it at the root cause of what is going into the body.
Yes.
And all of the refined foods that people eat that cause these glucose spikes, which totally overload your cellular system, that has to be corrected. So you cannot solve these diseases without the lifestyle changes that go along with it. And they're not diets, they're lifestyles.
It's true.
It's something that has to be long-term, because the disease is merely a symptom of an overloaded system that cannot cope with whatever it is coping with. So the pancreas hasn't stopped producing insulin. The insulin is no longer effective because the body has masked the receptor by putting a protein shield over it. In other words, closing up the doorknob, as it were, so that the door doesn't open. And therefore, both of them have to go hand in hand. And this is what people don't understand about health. Health is a combination of many, many factors. You know, there has to be exercise, there has to be, you can't expect to have a healthy circulation if the body isn't used to opening and closing blood vessels on a regular basis. Eventually you just become clogged in certain areas. You have to exercise, you have to have fresh air, you have to have good water, you have to have good nutrition, you need sunshine, you need all of these things, because they're in a package deal.
Yes.
And this is what's so wonderful in terms of how we are made and how we are integrated into our environment. And this smacks to me of creation, because creation is a non-selfish entity. You have to give in order to receive. You cannot have your glass filled if it is already full. You have to empty it in order to fill it on a spiritual level, and the same on a physical level. So all of these things work together, and as you say, you first have to reconstruct the body before you can say, all right, we've got it under control. But your medication and your mechanism might help to alleviate the problem, to bring the blood sugar down, to do all of those things. But if the lifestyle doesn't change, it's just going to go back to where it was.
It's kind of like if I was rubbing my arm with a piece of sandpaper, and you came and said, let me put some medicine on it. And you come put medicine on it, and you leave, I go rub my sandpaper again. And you come back and you say, oh, it's getting worse, you need some more medicine. You put more medicine. It's not going to heal till I stop the sandpaper. So I see my job as I work with people is to help them identify what's the sandpaper in their life. Find out those root causes, that sandpaper, stop the sandpaper. Yes, we may still need to do things to help, address it from a natural, like the herbs you talked about, hydrotherapy and different things, but you got to get rid of the cause or it's not going to heal.
Is there some practical ways that people that struggle with things can help identify certain causes of sandpaper? Like I'm just thinking of somebody that doesn't have access to something like a health center or something. Is there any practical things that they can do to realize what the sandpaper causes?
They can. We're very blessed. In 1863, it was actually the same morning that General Lee was marching his army from Fredericksburg over to Culpeper. It was a Friday morning, June 5. And what happened was as Lincoln sent Hooker down to try to cut him off, but Lee made it by, and he made it to Culpeper. Then he went on to the Virginia, to the Shenandoah Valley, went north, and then into Pennsylvania, and then we ended up having Gettysburg. If Hooker got him, we wouldn't have had Gettysburg. That same day, there was a group of people up in Battle Creek, Michigan, and they were heading to a camp meeting up about 30 miles northeast in Otsego, I believe is how they pronounce it. And they were going up there, and that evening, there was a vision that we found this information. It's just basic information. And you covered them. You've got nutrition. If you eat the right food, you got to put the right fuel in it. You're not gonna, when I was a boy, I remember there was a gas station my daddy wouldn't stop at. And I say, well, Dad, why don't you stop there? He says, they have problems, they have water in their gas.
Oh.
So we never got gas there. You don't put kerosene in a gas burner. You don't put diesel in a gas burner. And that's what we do. When you put Twinkies in you got Twinkie blood. And when you have Twinkie blood, you got a Twinkie brain. And you can't discern God's word. You can't, and so we've got to put good fuel in. We've got to have the water and adequate amounts of water, the exercise and the sunshine and making right decisions. They call that temperance. And it's not just don't drink and smoke and do drugs. There's a lot of other things we need to make right decisions on. What are we reading? What are we watching? What are we listening to? Are they gossiping over there? Well, we can help them change the conversation and say, I got something else to do and I need to work. Don't get involved in that. Making the right decisions. Having fresh air, diaphragmatic breathing is so important. Do you breathe like a chihuahua? Or do you have diaphragmatic breathing? Are you having good sleep? Are you going to bed on time? Are you getting those 8 hours of sleep? Are you getting into REM sleep? So important. Trusting God is the foundation. That's what makes it work. But there's a new one that I'm using, and I find it's very important. That same author talked about it, and it actually comes from Proverbs 17:22. It's a merry heart doeth good like a medicine.
Absolutely.
And I have people who come to me, they're just tore up all the time. Do y'all say tore up in South Africa?
Yeah.
I mean, they're either mean as a striped snake or they're trying to find fault with everybody, and they're all tore up. Everybody else around them gets tore up, and it messes not only with their health, but other people's health. And being positive, again, not Pollyanna, not just flitting around, but being positive is very, very important to your health. Before you treat the body, you got to treat the mind. And having a good, healthy thought process is so important to health. And if we're just finding fault all the time, if we're always just wallowing in the mud about this happened to me years ago, there's a guy, he's a psychiatrist, Dr. Walter Strachan. I don't know if you knew Dr. Strachan. He said, yes, there is a terrible thing that happened here, and it was wrong, but can you fix it now? It's happened, it's done, it's over, you can't fix it. You wrecked your car, you can't say, well, I'm going to go change.
It's like salvation.
Yeah, it is. You're right. And he says, let's take our eyes off of this. Let's look over here. Let's look at heaven. What do we need to do to get from here to heaven? And let's be positive.
All right. Now, how do you communicate with God? You communicate with God through your mind, right?
True. You can't have a Twinkie brain.
So you want to have a healthy, functioning mind. And people, I don't think, are aware of the influence of what you eat and what you drink, what that can have on your mind. If you are taking substances that cause either vasodilation or vasoconstriction, like a caffeinated beverage can cut the oxygen supply to your brain by up to 40%.
It's also a psychotropic.
Exactly. And how do you want to work around spiritual parameters when you're firing only on 2 instead of 4 cylinders?
True.
And people don't understand that if you take a fatty meal, for example, a fatty meal will line your blood vessels with a layer of fat. That means that the oxygen cannot penetrate your capillaries as readily as in a nice clean system. That means the oxygen supply is cut down. So fatty meals, free fatty meals, particularly the saturated animal fat variety, will cut the oxygen supply to your brain. Insufficient hydration will cause certain changes in the brain because cells dehydrate, and that means they have to protect themselves. In other words, they shut down certain functions. So your mind and your nutrition are very, very closely linked to each other. And if you want to have a good spiritual experience, then you need a healthy lifestyle. And the New Age world, which is not a Christian world, has realized this, and if they want to have a spiritual experience, they will go on a healthy lifestyle. So a lot of the lifestyle things in the world today are New Age. But if you take it from a biblical perspective, God in His Word has given us so many pointers as to how to live and how to avoid certain things and what to eat and what not to eat. For example, you're not supposed to eat the fat or the blood of an animal, and you're not supposed to eat unclean animals because they are loaded with toxins. Because as you go up the food chain from a herbivore up to a carnivore, there is an accumulation of toxins called biological magnification. And God has cut all of that out in His Word, and yet humanity seems to want to do the opposite. You spoke of the military. There's another story in the German military. Rommel, he controlled northern Africa, and their food supply, of course, was supplied largely from Germany as well. And his soldiers were experiencing many, many diseases, and especially in the hot North African desert climate. And his soldiers were constantly sick, or they had boils, or they had carbuncles or furuncles or urticaria or any one of those. And so he commissioned an investigation as to why the locals didn't have these diseases, but his soldiers had them. And the report came back, the difference really is they're eating the same kind of food, but they're not eating certain things like pork, for example. And so he commissioned that the German army or his division in North Africa should get no more pork. Actually caused quite a bit of a riot because that's part and parcel of the German diet. And the diseases disappeared. So there's a very strong correlation, right?
There is.
And in my own life, when I was at the university and teaching medical bioscience, and people would come and they would have urticaria, or they would have carbuncles, or they would have something or other, and time and again it was one of two root causes. Either they had pork, or they had chicken. And the chicken today, we know, is not raised like it used to be in the old days, so the toxic levels are sky high. We worked a lot on those. So what you eat actually affects your system, and a toxified system affects your mind. And in the spirit of prophecy, we read a lot about that, right? The relationship between what you consume and how you think, and what your spiritual discernment is. Don't we need spiritual discernment in the times that we are living in, Walt?
Absolutely. You know, Daniel 12:1 says it'll be as time as never before. And, you know, when I go to Rwanda and I go to the Genocide Museum and I see what happened. I mean, I met the conference president. His wife and 8 children were slaughtered by machete. And the stories are just so much more graphic.
In the early 1990s, one of the most horrible events in the history of the world occurred: the genocide in Rwanda. In that genocide, Hutus battling against Tutsis, 1 million people were killed in less than 9 months. When the genocide began, there were 380,000 Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, in Rwanda. When it ended, 100,000 were dead. In 6 months, 100,000 Adventists were slain, not because they were Adventists, but because they were part of the minority tribe. In recent years, I've traveled to Rwanda on a number of occasions, speaking in large stadiums. There are trials going on right now in Rwanda trying the killers. As we traveled there, I talked to my host, the union president, Eman Rutalinga, and I said, Pastor Rutalinga, did anybody that you know die in the genocide? He said, Pastor Mark, I was out preaching the day that the radio announcement came, cut down the tall trees. And when the radio announcement came, cut down the tall trees, tens of thousands of militia, largely young people with machetes, ran through the streets, killing every Tutsi they could see. The killing was so great that the bodies stacked up in the streets and dogs came and ate them. The killing was so great that they threw thousands of bodies into the river, and the river was clogged with bodies. Pastor Rutalinga was out preaching as union president. The militia came into the church, brought out his wife, his 3 children, his grandchildren, and killed them outside the church that day. I talked to the conference president. Did you lose anybody? He said, yes, I did. I said, who did you lose? He said, I lost my wife, my 7 children. I talked to my driver. Did you lose anybody? Yeah, I lost 47 members of my family. I'm the only one that survived. As I talked to them, Pastor Eman Rutalinga said to me, he said, Mark, I want you to meet a woman. And when you meet her, your life will be changed forever. Her name is Adele Selfu. And so we got in the truck and we went out this rough road, back country, outside of Kigali in Rwanda. And Pastor Rutalinga told me the story as we went. This woman had been with her husband when the killers came, and she held his hand as they put a machete and split his head open, and as they hit him in the neck and they murdered him. She was there. And Pastor Eman Rutalinga said, Mark, I believe she will tell you the story. As I walked into her house, I saw a picture of her pastor, Seventh-day Adventist pastor husband, on the wall. And in respect, I simply walked over and stood and looked at the picture. And I thought about what it would be like if I were holding my wife's hand and somebody ran to me, and the horror that she would go through as they split my head open with a machete. As we sat down, we made small talk for a while, and Mrs. Selfu came in the room. And I broached the subject very carefully. I said, Sister Selfu, I understand you were with your husband when the militia hacked him to death. It may be very difficult to talk about it, but would you like to share it with me? She began to cry, and she said, Pastor, I'll share it. She said, we got word that the militia was coming closer and closer to our village. We fled with 45 others to a Catholic church in the basement. We thought it would be a hiding place and they may go by the church. As we were in the basement, the militia came in with machetes. They began to hack and hack and hack. Actually, there were 60 people in the room. 45 were killed immediately. She said, I held my husband's hand and somebody came and just hit him with a machete and the blood from his head splat all over me. She said, it was horrible, Pastor. And then the person took the machete and hit me in the head. She pulled back her beautiful black hair and I saw a scar that began here and went down the center of her head. She said, Pastor, they then hit me in my wrist, trying to chop off my wrist. She held up her wrist. It was just flapping around. She said, Pastor, then they hit me on the shoulder. And she pulled down her dress a little bit, and I saw the scar on her shoulder. She said, they left me for dead. And my body lay among the dead bodies for 3 days. At the end of 3 days, the militia had moved on. So she said, villagers came to bury the dead. Somebody, before they buried me, felt my pulse, and I still had a pulse. So they took me. I was unconscious. They began to nurse me back. Pastor, I was in and out of hospitals for 3 years. By this time, the forces from outside of Rwanda that were in the Congo fought their way back, liberated the country, and they built 18 prisoners for the murderers. They put 180,000 people in prison. Mrs. Selfo took 3 years to get back to health, but by now there was stability in the country. And she said to me, Pastor Mark, I have to make a decision of whether I'm going to be a bitter, angry old woman or not. And she said, I made a decision that my husband's death would not be in vain. I had the assurance beating in my heart that Jesus Christ was coming again, and that the thing that my husband would want would me to go to minister to the killers. So, Pastor, there's a prison not far from this village, and I became the mother of that prison. I would go in and bring blankets into the prison because of the cold nights. I would go in and bring food to the prison. I began studying the Bible with the prisoners. These were killers. One day, Pastor, I was in the prison. A young man fell at my feet, and he began to kiss my feet. And I looked at his face, and he said, do you remember me? And she said, I wish I could get that face out of my mind. It was the young man in his early 20s that took the machete and chopped my husband's head in half. It was the young man. I never knew he was in that prison. I never thought that I would see him again. It was the young man that took the machete and put the scar in my head and gave me such pain. And he said, would you forgive me? And she said, I picked him up and I hugged him and I said, I will forgive you. Pastor, I studied the Bible with him for 6 months. Pastor, he stood up before the whole prison and we assembled all the prisoners in the prison yard the day of his baptism and he confessed his sin. Pastor, we baptized him. Now, Pastor, he got amnesty after a few years and was let out of the prison. But here's the problem. His father and mother were killed in the genocide. He had no place to live. Pastor, I adopted him as my son. Would you like to meet him? My heart was beating. Beads of perspiration stood out of my head. I looked at the pastor's picture, who this man had killed. I thought a killer was going to walk through the door. And Lewis walked through the door. A gentle smile on his face, a sparkle in his eyes. And Mrs. Selfu walked over and put her arms around him. And she said, let me introduce you to my adopted son. She said, one day when Jesus comes, all the suffering will be worth it all.
And to be able to mentally be able to go through a time as never before, our minds have to be clear.
Yes.
To be able to talk to God and say, okay, what's my next move? Help me with this. And the other thing that many people don't look at is they'll come in and they'll say, this is my body, I can do whatever I want to with it.
You can't. You were bought with a price.
It's
your body
right.
is not your own.
1 Corinthians 6 is very clear on it. We're just caretakers. And 3 says what's going to happen if we don't take care of it. It'll be destroyed. And then you look at 1 Corinthians 10:31. God gives little cues out there because he loves us. It doesn't say, whatever you do all to the glory of God.
Yes.
That would be totally including everything. But he loves us, just like that commandment that he told us, there's a special day you need to watch here. Be careful, guys, you're going to forget it. On here it says, whether therefore ye eat or drink,
Do all to the
or
glory
do whatever
of God.
you do. And so he loves us, and he says, be careful what you eat, be careful what you drink, because it's going to affect the body.
Yes. Well, Romans chapter 12 makes it quite clear that what you eat has an effect on your mind. You know, people today think the atrocities and the things that happened in the past, let's say under Mao Zedong or the Nazi regime or any one of those, that we have transcended that, it won't happen again. If you want to know what humanity is capable of, you have to take note of what it's done in history. And the Bible already says there's nothing new under the sun, and man's nature certainly hasn't changed for the better over 6,000 years. So we can expect the worst from humanity. And if you are pushed in a certain direction, well, just look at history and look at the effects and the tortures of the Middle Ages and the terrible atrocities that mankind can come up with. And if you think that it is a thing of the past, then look at modern warfare and some of the tortures that have been going on and the horrendous stories that are coming out. Humanity hasn't changed. We need to have a clear connection with God. We need to have a clean body so that we can hear the voice of God. Because the voice of God is a still small voice. It's not going to shout at you. You have to listen for it. So diet and health are all very important, and yes, we need drugs or let's say alternatives to drugs, because drugs will always have a negative symptom. I mean, take any simple medication today, whatever it is, anything, and take out the packet and read what the side effects are. They're as long as your arm, right? Whereas if you take something of a herbal nature, then mostly that is not the case. So in terms of allopathy or naturopathy, obviously if you can, you go the natural route, right? And cleanse the body, and cleanse the mind.
You know, I ship out quite a few people on helicopters. The interstate I-40 runs through my fire district, and we have some really bad wrecks. No charcoal poultice isn't going to work for that compound fracture.
No.
And so I've got to put them on a helicopter and send them to UT in Knoxville.
Absolutely.
There's a place for that. Type 1 diabetes, we haven't figured out yet. You know, yes, let's say you're type 1 and you're using 60, 80 units of insulin. It's not uncommon to be able to help you get down to 10, even 5 units of insulin, which is a whole lot better.
Yes, but that's just because you're controlling your blood sugar naturally.
Yes.
But you're not solving the problem because you don't have insulin.
You're correct. And so we haven't figured that out. But there is a promise that if we will study physiology, we can use less and less dosing of medication until we get to the point we don't have to use any. We're told that in Inspiration. That's a promise we can get there. But what it does is we have to take the time and study physiology. And we need to study physiology more than we're studying pharmacology of how to just treat the signs and symptoms. Let's get and figure out how that body works. And I believe we can get to that point to where we can learn how to deal with that type 1. Because I can tell you, when I left regular health care and I told corporate that I was leaving, I had worked in it for 25 years in administration. And I said, I'm going to a place that can reverse type 2 diabetes. They looked at me in the eye and said, Walt, you're crazy. It cannot be done. Don't do it. You're going to ruin your reputation. And then I said, we can even improve type 1 diabetes. And they looked at me in the eye and said, Walt, you are stupid. You're going to ruin your reputation. You cannot improve type 1 diabetes. Well, guess what? I went to a place, you can reverse type 2. Yes, you can reverse type 1. And so we just have to spend time, learn that physiology, and how's best to? Talk to God. Ask Him for help as we do that research. Point me to how the body works. And as we study and as we learn, I believe He will show those to us. So one of the challenges I'm concerned with is Satan, he sees what works and he repeats it. And as we look with Adam, Adam chose to eat the fruit not because he wanted to be like God. It's because he loved his wife more than God. But it didn't stop there. You go on to, why did Lot's wife die? Not because she turned around. Lot died, his wife died because Lot tarried. Correct? Why did he tarry? His children. His children were there and he wanted to get his children out. If he had gone ahead and gone, she wouldn't have turned around. They'd probably been long gone and she would have been safe. Can that happen in the end? Are we preparing people today for that situation? Yes, as men, our job is to prepare our family, our spouses, our children, but we can't make them. God does not make us do things. And we can be examples, we can share with them, but that person has a choice whether they accept God or not. But I believe that as we look at the end, are we prepared to step away if we had to? You know, Adam should have not eaten of the fruit, but he could not. You've got a good love affair.
Through the fog.
Yeah, you've got a great love affair. But he had the best love affair. There was no sin. None, period. He just could not imagine being away from losing his wife. I believe that can happen in the end, where a spouse can
hold you back.
Hold that person back. Or the children or the grandchildren hold that person back. Are we ready for that psychologically? How do we prepare for that?
That is an excellent question. The answer lies, I think, in Enoch. You have to walk with God. You have to understand the mindset of God. You must understand that God is more willing to save everybody than you are ever capable of. He's so willing that he gave up his life in order to make it possible. But he's not a God of coercion. So your thinking pattern has to come into harmony with the thinking pattern of God. To be sanctified, to be holy, one of the definitions that we read about is to be in agreement with God. So when God says it, there is an urgency. So basically what it means, Walt, is that we have to prepare our families now.
True.
And not wait until the last minute before we say or do anything and then frantically try and reverse what we have neglected over the years. We basically have to do it now. And when God speaks, you act.
And also, if you must prepare yourself in a way that you must have that relationship with God, that no matter what, and that's hard to say, what you said earlier, even if nobody should stand between your relationship with God, not your children, not your wife, nobody. That is the first line, and then the rest follow. So
it's that relationship. We have to have that relationship with God.
You have to have it. You have to have that daily walk.
That's the key.
And you must be able to discern the voice, and you must act upon it.
So how did were you always into health?
My degree was in healthcare administration. I did that for 20 years. In the last 2.5 years of that time, 3 years of that time, I got very sick. And I had a health problem that you can die from. And my gastroenterologist told me that there was no fixing what I had, that I was going to die. Well, when the doctor tells you you're going to die, then you go to another doctor. And I remembered a cardiologist that I'd had dinner with about 5 years before. And he told me about a physician that had gone to Loma Linda Medical School, but he practiced natural medicine. And so I went to him. He's actually here at this convention right now. And I went to him, and he, through lifestyle, what you do at your lifestyle center, he had me change my lifestyle. And in 6 months, I was totally healed. At that same time, and it's interesting how God works, at that same time, in that same process, I went to a church, and we had a lay pastor, and he asked me if I would preach. And I'd never preached before, and I said, what do I do? But I always believed if the nominating committee asks you to do something, you pray, and if that's what God wants you to do, then I guess I need to figure out how to do it. Well, I said, okay, tell me what I need to preach on. I've never preached before. I was nervous as could be. And so he handed me this little book. He said, I want you to preach on what's in this book. It was a nice way of him telling me, Walt, you're in the wrong profession and you need a different profession. The man was smart. So he gave me this book, and I read the whole book. Now, to preach on something, you got to read it thoroughly to preach on it.
Absolutely. You can't teach if you don't.
Exactly. So I read the book very thoroughly, and then I preached on it. And comparative analysis is very important in business, in healthcare. I grew up on a farm. Comparative analysis is important there too. And so I compared what was in this book to what I was doing at work. I compared it with my own life. And when I was a boy, my father, growing up on a farm, he put me to bed every night. It was a different generation. It wasn't they asked you something, they told you something. And he told me he expected me. Often he would tell me, he says, son, you're going to grow up. You're going to want a wife. You're going to want a family. I expect you to get a job, make enough money that you can put food on the table, a roof on their head, and I expect that it be legal and ethical. He said, I don't care if you dig ditches. This is what I expect of you. That was just the generation. Boom.
It was a good generation.
Yes. So, after my health issue and not being fixed, and this guy helping me, it corrected. The industry I worked in couldn't fix me. But here, doing natural fixed me. I read this book, and as I read the book, what it said to do was not what we did at work. Two different things. And I went home to Mary Lou one evening and I said, I don't care if I dig ditches. What I'm doing is legal, but it's not ethical. I'm playing games in healthcare. And we did, we played a lot of games. And I said, I'm changing careers. And that little book was Ministry of Healing.
Ministry of Healing?
Yes. And it changed my career. Yeah.
I was going to ask you what the book was.
So that's recommended reading.
It really is. And you know, I give that book out a lot. And there's a lady who you've worked with a good bit, Barbara O'Neill. So I'm in North Carolina. I read that little book. I changed my career. Barbara's in Australia working in healthcare. She read that little book. She changed her career. That little book changed both of our careers.
That's amazing. But you probably used that same book in quite a few of your experiments at university.
Actually, it took me a long time to read before I read Ministry of Healing. I did read other books, of course, Counsels on Diets and Foods and all of those. But Ministry of Healing had a spiritual dimension to it that I had to grow into. And in the beginning, of course, as a scientist, I had so many scientific anomalies that I had to sort out. I had to have so many mind switches. So from an evolutionist to a creationist, that's a mega mind shift. And then also in terms of health. And then I was a physiologist. So that was my subject. I loved physiology. And later on in my career, I was the professor of physiology. They called it medical bioscience, but it was physiology. So I needed to get to grips with the science. Why? Cause and effect. Whereas Ministry of Healing has a lot of that, but it has a tremendous spiritual dimension. So I first had to solve the science, then I went to the spiritual and gained that insight. So it was a little bit different from yours, but maybe my hard-nosed, analytical German mind needed that at that stage.
Yes.
So Council on Diets and Food, it says,
Yes.
it's all very straightforward,
Yes.
almost Gestapo style. And that's what I needed in the beginning.
It's amazing how God works.
Yeah.
He had the solution for both of your problems in the same author, but just different books.
Different books, yeah.
It's true. You know, the book that you mentioned there, Counsels and Diets and Foods, I knew a lady, she was in New York, and we were in a ministry together, and she said that she had gone on a trip out of New York City. And she was sitting in first class, and a man sat down beside her, and he pulls out this book and starts reading it. And she said, "Oh, you must be a Seventh-day Adventist." And he goes, "No, why do you ask?" She says, "The book you're reading is mine. It was Counsels on Diet and Foods." And he goes, "No, he was Dr. Oz."
Oh, Dr. Oz. That's interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Thanks.
That is interesting.
Well, thank you very much for
Yes.
your time. It was
Thank you.
amazing to having this talk. Thank you. So if you can just give the viewers your contact details and where they can get hold of your ministry.
Yes, it's the Mustard Seed, themustardseed.us. And you can also just go to Google and type in Walt Cross, and it will take you right there.
And you can also find some of Walt's material on our download service and everything. So be free, go and have a look there, and it's wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, it's been very nice having this discussion.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to be able to share with you that we've also tried to start implementing these things, and we have some very positive results. And if you add the spiritual side to it, you cannot divorce the two, because whether you eat or whether you drink, do all to the glory of God, then the blessing of God will accompany it. So may the Lord bless you in your work.
Thank you, sir. Y'all too.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. It has been an honor to have a talk to you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Shall we close in prayer?
Please.
Heavenly Father, we have a vested interest. You have wonderfully constructed our bodies, and you have given us a lot of information in your word and through inspiration as to how to deal with it. Help us to implement it wisely and to help others to do it too, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.